It's the Scotty Myers Show.
Hey, welcome to this week's edition of the show. I'm your host, Scotty Myers. Hopefully, you're having a fantastic week so far. I've been having a very eventful week, which I'll get to in a minute. But first, got some great comments, both on the Facebook page and on the iTunes page recently. And just wanted to thank everybody for those. Keep those coming in. We love the feedback. So make sure, if you ever have thoughts on the show, you drop us a line at the Scotty Myers Show on Instagram, the Scotty Myers Show on Facebook, at Scotty Myers on Twitter. As I said, love to hear from you. Love any feedback, thoughts, comments, questions, anything like that. So with that out of the way, get into my somewhat very busy week. Tuesday was my second wedding anniversary, and I always feel immense pressure to make the anniversary special. And I've talked to some of my friends who have been married longer, and they're like, that's going to pass. It's going to go away. Don't worry about it. It said the same thing to me about Valentine's Day. When I said I had to go out and get my wife a Valentine's Day gift, they were like, you still do that? You'll stop. And I kind of hope I never do. It's stressful, 100%, because I always want to make sure that she has a great time, whatever we do, and that she understands that everything I'm doing is just another way to show her how I feel about her and all that kind of stuff. And yes, that's very sappy, whatever. But, I want to hit a home run. And I know there are some people going, well, you do those types of things the other 364 days of the year. And yes, I try to do that too. But when the special days pop up, you try to make them a little bit more special. It's like Christmas, except your own private Christmas, right? It's a special day, so you try to make it a little bit more special. So took her to a dinner. We actually ended up at the same place that we got married and had a fantastic dinner there, a little restaurant, Lot 6 in Halifax. If you're ever in town, definitely check it out. The drinks are amazing too, which I think without those drinks, she might not have said I do. I don't know, but the drinks were flowing the night of the wedding. And then I took her to see David Sedaris, who I had never seen before, never read any of his stuff. I knew she was a fan, so I thought, great, just coincidentally, he's performing in our city when our anniversary is. So, kind of serendipitous. And I walked out a fan. Very, very funny, very cutting with his humor, very witty guy. Like I say, I was never familiar with any of his writing, and now we have a couple of his books, and she had some from before, and I'm looking forward to reading them because she's told me the same way he was on stage, that's the exact same way the books read. And now that I kind of have his voice in my head, I actually think I'll enjoy those books a bit more, because whenever you read something, obviously there's a voice that you attach to it. And now, having heard his voice, I can actually attach his voice to it. So after seeing that stuff, I'm a fan. If you have not checked out any David Sedaris stuff, I would highly, highly recommend it. Really, really funny guy. And then on top of the second anniversary, within the last couple of weeks, we pretty much decided to sell the house. Now we have a house, we like it, but it's too big for us. And I'm not saying that in a way of like, oh, yes, my house is so large. It's the two of us, a dog, and a cat. We don't need a 3-level home. The basement never gets used, with the exception of letting the dog out, and that's where the laundry room is. If it was not for those two things, that basement would be a crypt that nobody ever entered. So we're downsizing, but now we're going through all those steps of selling the house. And if you've never done this before, it can be a tad nerve-wracking, and you also feel like maybe I'm going to get judged a bit, because you have the real estate agent come in, he goes through it, gives us an idea of what he thought the house was worth and what we can put it on the market for, and then once you agree to that, you're like, oh, that sounds great. Then they have to come in and take pictures, and you tidy up, and you're trying to make the house look as best as it can, but you're still thinking, like, are people going to look at these photos and think our furniture's trash? Or, does the house look good? Just things like that, right? And this is a home that you've lived in and loved and put some pride into, and you're just kind of throwing it out there for the world to see and have their own opinion on. So really, really weird. It's, and now we're into the stage of like they're starting to book showings, and it's like, oh my goodness, people are going to come in here. And as I'm sitting here recording the podcast, I can smell the cat litter, and I'm like, I got to make sure I change that cat litter so that it doesn't smell like that when people come tomorrow. Just things like that. You're kind of half living out of a suitcase, half not. So hopefully it sells quickly just so you can get back to normal life. But it's definitely an odd situation to be in. If you've ever done it, I think you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't done it, be prepared. At some point you will go through this, and it's a weird feeling. So that kind of catches you up on what I've been up to since we last talked. I had an interesting discussion the other day with two other people, myself included, so 3 in total, all different ages, talking about something that doesn't really exist anymore. And I had way more of an affinity for it than the 20-year-old that I work with. And then kind of the guy that was in his 30s, not as much of a kind of romantic thought about it, but still miss them. And we're talking about video stores. Somehow we got on the topic of video stores like Blockbuster and that type of thing, and how they're gone. They don't exist anymore. And I used to work in one. I used to work in a Blockbuster years ago. And I'll tell you right now, one of the best jobs I ever had. I mean, I am a movie buff. I love films. So to get to kind of talk movies all day long, why not, right? But it was just kind of cool, like recommending movies to people. You would watch stuff that you would never watch because you got to take home free rentals. So you'd always, experiment with different movies and stuff like that. You do become a bit of a movie snob working in a video store where you're like, oh yes, that Hollywood blockbuster. Yeah, it's all right. You should check out this little indie film. And when I was working in video stores, it was kind of the end of the 90s, like mid 90s. And that was indie films height. So there was lots of great independent films to recommend to people, and constantly be like, hey, have you seen Clerks? People, Clerks, what's that? It's black and white. And of course, it's hilarious and one of the greatest films ever. So anyway, we started talking about it, and it was so funny, just the generational thing, because the coworker that we had this in his 20s, he was like, I have no memory of going to a video store. He was like, vaguely, maybe. And the other coworker that was in his like 30s is like, I remember it, but I grew up in a small town, so we didn't really have the big video store like a Blockbuster or something like that. And then me, it was like, I used to love going to the video store. When I was a kid and it was a Friday night and my parents looked at me and said, let's all go rent a movie, I got so excited. The video store to me was this little heaven. And this is what is missing now, right? Netflix and all these streaming services, they're great. Don't get me wrong. But they lack the magic of the video store. Going with your family, going there, walking around, reading the descriptions. You find something you want to see. Your parents find something they want to see. Maybe you rent both of them. Maybe you have to come to a compromise. You pick up your snacks. You go home and everybody gathers up together and watches the movie. It was a whole process and everybody was invested in it. And now you just kind of pushing a button. How does that look like? No. Until maybe you find something. And if you had 3 hours to watch a movie, most of the time you spend at least half of that time trying to figure out what you want to watch. Because there's no pressure to make the decision, right? You're on your couch in your underwear. You could scroll all night if you wanted to, but when you were in the video store, there was a little bit of pressure of like, I don't want to be here all night. I want to go home and watch a fucking movie. So what the hell am I going to rent? And then sometimes you would rent something, you're just, fuck it, this'll do. And you'd take it home and you put it in, and 10 minutes into the movie, you'd be like, this is shit. Like, I picked a stinker of a movie, but I paid for it. Like, I rented this thing. I'm seeing it through to the end. The number of bad movies that I watched from beginning to end because I rented them, I can't count. I have no idea what that number is. I know it's a lot. but I can't give you an exact number. Whereas you start a bad movie on Netflix, 10 minutes in, you're like, fuck this, we'll find something else. It takes it all away, right? It takes you out of that magic. So it will never happen. It won't. But if I could have a wish, a very insignificant, stupid wish that a genie would come and grant, it would be that video stores return. Something about that would make me just one happy little camper. It really would. I saw a headline today, and there wasn't much more to the story than the headline, but I really want to know more about the story. A man in Detroit who was 65 and 6 women in bikinis were denied service at a restaurant because they were all too drunk. And that's the story. That's all that they had in this article, really. But don't you want to know more? Like, who's this 65-year-old guy? How does he have so much pull that 6, not 1, 6 bikini-clad women are strolling around with him, and they're all having a good time. They're all partying, having fun. Now, it didn't say if he was bikini-clad or Speedo-clad or anything like that. I'm assuming whatever he was wearing had to have pockets, because there's no way he's rolling without Viagra. 65, 6 women, you're going to need some assistance later in the night. I really hope more of this story comes to light. On to the off story of the week. A story where the headline just makes you go, for fuck's sakes. And this one was a bit of a viral sensation. And I only made it an off story because I just don't know how this guy thought he was going to get away with it. There was a fella in Brazil, and he tried to escape prison over the weekend by dressing as his 19-year-old daughter. So the headline, inmate disguises himself as daughter, tries to escape. What? His disguise was pretty elaborate. I'll give him that. He had her clothes on, a silicone mask, like almost like if you ever watched like Charlie's Angels and they like pull the masks off or something like that, like kind of like that. Long black wig. The guards caught him though, and there's a video circulating online of them taking the things off, and it's creepy because the silicone mask is just expressionless. Like, it's really kind of creepy. And he was 42. His daughter's 19. He's serving a 73-year prison sentence for drug trafficking. And this all came down. His daughter came to visit him. He disguised himself as her and tried to leave. And if he didn't look like something out of the movie, it might have worked. But especially when his daughter came in, apparently she was acting pretty nervously. So they took a closer look when she was leaving and then realized that it was actually the prisoner and not his daughter. And here's the other thing about this story that would make you go, for fuck's sakes. Now, you know this guy's, presumably not a good dude. He's serving a 73-year prison sentence. He's since been transferred to a maximum security prison, but his daughter was probably in on the plan, but he probably talked her into it. She was going to stay behind in jail. And I don't know how that was going to work. Like, did she just think, I'll shave my head and take his place? Because he did have a shaved head. And then what daughter does that for a father? Listen, there's limits. I'm just saying. So now she could be facing charges too. So both of them could be locked up and behind bars. Absolutely ridiculous. This guy, he watched one too many old school Mission Impossible episodes. Like, dude, Jane Ethan Hunt, okay? Offs. On to the geek news of the week. We've got a little bit for you. We're going to start with a bit of Disney news. Stuff is coming out as we head towards D23, the big Disney con, basically, where they're going to unveil a bunch of stuff. But we're getting dribs and drabs of some news coming out. Like, of course, Disney purchased Fox, which put a lot of franchises up in the air. One of them that we now found out will continue is the Planet of the Apes franchise, which is great news because those are fantastic movies. But Disney has said that they are going to keep the Planet of the Apes story continuing. That is good news. The other discussion they're currently having centers around Deadpool. They are not sure what to do with Deadpool. Apparently they want to make more Deadpool movies, but they want to keep them R-rated. But then they also want to bring Deadpool over into the MCU, where at best he can be PG-13. So they're trying to see if there's a way to make both things exist, R-rated Deadpool solo movies and PG-13 Deadpool in the MCU. I think you could do it, but you're only going to be able to have dribs and drabs of Deadpool in the MCU then. He can't be a main character because then it will feel like he's watered down. If he only shows up here and there and only has a couple of jokes that he knocks out of the park, by the end of the movie, you'd be like, oh yeah, Deadpool didn't say fuck. You wouldn't notice it until the end. But if he's on screen for 2 hours of a 2.5 hour movie and he's not cursing, that you're going to notice. So it has to be done very, very tactfully is the best way they can do it. The other little bit of news that has come out about Disney is the Disney Plus streaming service. They're going to bundle it with their other streaming services. So Hulu and ESPN Plus are all going to be bundled together for $12.99 a month. So that's $5 less than if you bought them all separately. And that's a hell of a bargain. It really, really is. And I mean, with everything that they say they're going to have on Disney Plus, like not even the original content, but just all the old, like it's going to launch with every Star Wars movie on there that's out so far, you know, a bunch of the old MCU movies and all Disney classics. That alone is worth $12.99 a month. Then you throw in, you know, The Mandalorian, you know, Falcon and Winter Soldier, WandaVision, Loki, those shows, ESPN Plus, all that for $12.99. That might be the best deal in streaming, in all honesty. And if you're like me and you can't wait for Disney Plus, it will be coming in November, and we're going to actually see some footage from some of the shows coming up at that D23 conference at the end of the month. Everybody is very excited about the Picard show, and rightfully so, because that trailer was freaking amazing. And if you can't wait to get your Picard fix in 2020, there are some things coming between now and the launch of the show that will basically help fill the gap, and also help fill the gap in Jean-Luc Picard's life. There's a 3-issue comic book miniseries coming called Star Trek Picard Countdown, and that series is going to be written by Star Trek comic veterans Mike Johnson and Kirsten Beyer, and that's going to focus on a mission that changes his life forever. I'm sure they may mention that in the show. And then after that, in February of 2020, there's a novel called The Last Best Hope, and that will also lead right into the events of the Picard series, including some of the characters featured in the new series. So if you want to kind of, it's almost like a pre-required reading for the new series, but put those on your lists of must-reads, because if they're as good as the show looks, they're going to be worth reading. On to the DC news. There's a couple of very cool tidbits that have dropped. First off, we got our first taste of Titans Season 2. That trailer, if you have not seen it, it is up on the Scotty Mars Show on Facebook. Go watch it now. Pause this. Go watch that Titans trailer. It is phenomenal. We get a look at Batman, Bruce Wayne. We see Aqualad. We see Crypto, a little bit of Superboy in there. And then the end of the trailer gives us a good look at Deathstroke. So very, very cool trailer. Definitely a great tease for Titans Season 2. Season 1 I thought was phenomenal. Way better than I thought it was going to be based on the first trailer I saw for Season 1. Having seen this trailer for Season 2, my excitement is through the roof. Season 2 of Titans debuts September 6th. And speaking of DC TV events, of course, this year is the final year of Arrow, but they also have the massive Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover event. It's going to be a 5-parter that will start in December and carry into January. It is gearing up to be perhaps the most ambitious thing I have seen done in the realm of comic books. And I know some people might argue with me the Avenger storyline, but that was at least all a singular timeline. I mean, yeah, they did some time travel stuff in there, but they weren't pulling in characters from other universes. And that's what they're doing on Crisis on Infinite Earths. Brandon Routh, who is in the Legends TV show as the Atom, you may remember, he played Superman in Superman Returns many, many years ago. He will be donning the Superman suit one more time for Crisis on Infinite Earths. And when he showed the logo, it was the Kingdom Come Superman, which would be very, very cool. Burt Ward, who was Robin in the animated, or not the animated, pardon me, the 1966 Batman series, is coming back for an undisclosed role. They're talking about bringing in some people from Smallville. And then they recently just announced Kevin Conroy, the guy whose voice you know as Batman, will be a Batman in Crisis on Infinite Earths. Now, I don't know if he's going to be an aged Batman, if he's just going to be a voice. These things I do not know yet, but it's incredible. And Mark Hamill's Joker also going to be a part of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Not to mention Batwoman before her show launches. Black Lightning is coming over. This is going to be a massive, massive event. And they have 5 episodes to tell it. So a little under 5 hours to tell this story. Obviously, if you listen to this podcast, my heart lies a little bit more with DC. I'm not going to hide that. I enjoy Marvel movies. I love Marvel characters. But I do lean a little bit more DC. From what I'm reading and what they're trying to take on this Crisis on Infinite Earths, I am more excited for this than I was for Avengers Endgame. I think this is a more ambitious project. What they're trying to do is pull a lot of DC historical threads together and join them all under one roof. And who knows, maybe they tie the movies in somehow at this point, like the current batch of movies. You never know. Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman could show up. Jason Momoa's Aquaman. Zachary Levi Shazam. What they're doing means the possibilities are endless. Absolutely insane. It is going to be must watch for sure. Again, that's going to take place December into January. I don't think I've ever been this excited about an event. I really don't. It's going to be phenomenal. And that will wrap it up for this week. Once again, thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. If you're not subscribing yet, you should do so. Of course, you can get us on iTunes, Spotify, Podbeam, wherever you get your podcasts, and keep leaving those ratings and reviews for us. It's really helping push us on some of like the feature pages, which just gets more and more listeners to the show. Again, social media, if you want to reach out and contact us, it's the Scotty Mars Show on Facebook and on Instagram, and at Scotty Mars on Twitter. And of course, you can always hear us streaming Thursday mornings at 8:30 on blasttheradio.com. So until we chat again, have a great week.